So here we are in the first week of April, and at the River Forecast Center, with all the snow we've had, we're actually saying we haven't had any main stem flooding yet through March. We've had some backwater flooding from the main stem here in southeastern New England, but no flooding really to speak of yet. I'm showing the false color image on the MODIS satellite this morning. The cyan colors are snow and ice, and it's much better on your screen than it is on the screen here we have in the office on your feet. And you can see pretty well how we're losing some of the snow across western New York and the valleys of the Hudson Valley, Champlain Valley here in southern New England. As we look into western New York, our concern was we had some snow water equivalent readings in the Buffalo Creek area, and it was verified by looking at the satellite image here, the cyan color scene. There's still some snow left as we got near flood stage overnight. Finger Lakes are opening up, and you see there up in the upper right, Oneida Lake is still ice covered. And as we head over into the Hudson Valley, the Mohawk River there, the tributary coming in from the left, there's quite an ice jam here in the Schenectady, Rexford, Lock 8 area. It's been, it's had a 3 to 4 foot backwater a couple days ago. It kind of lessened, and now we see runoff and backwater increasing quickly, 2 feet on these USGS gauges. And also, we can see some openings here in the Connecticut River is open pretty much to the Massachusetts border with Vermont, and the Merrimack is opened up. And you can see on the way up in the left-hand corner some thin ice and opening on Lake Champlain, and up here in the upper right is Mount Washington, and Sebago Lake and Winnipesaukee is still ice covered. Now, as we looked at the last 2 weeks, we've had the cold stretch continued with some more warming, below normal temperatures across the Northeast. These 3 graphics are from the Northeast Regional Climate Center. In the center graphic, you can see for about the past month, the whole month of March, we were still 4 to 8 degrees below normal across the Northeast, as the pattern pretty much continued. One thing I didn't mention, if you have your phones, could you please mute them? Snow events continued with snow north, rain, snow here in the south. Snow depths and snow water equivalent increased. We were fortunate with the slow, controlled melt, but in northern New England we had little melt, especially in Maine, which can be an issue for April. And the precipitation on the left graphic for the last month, the last 2 weeks, and the last month on the right graphic, below normal across the Northeast. That below normal precipitation on the 90-day and 180-day pictures here is pretty prevalent across most of our area, especially New York State, which could be an issue as we go down the road. The U.S. Drought Monitor, we've noticed an increase in the abnormally dry parts of New York and interior New England. D0 meaning abnormally dry precipitation amounts in the last 3 to 4 months. As we look at our snow conditions this morning, upper left graphic is the snow depth. We still have over 2 feet in the Tug Hill Plateau, part of the lower greens, the White Mountains, and much of the interior and down east Maine. So the upper right graphic, I'll get into a little bit clearer graphic from the River Forecast Center in a second. We still have a lot of 5 to 8 and even 8 to 12 inch snow water equivalents in the Tug Hill Plateau, the Green and White Mountains, and interior and down east Maine. The lower left graphic from NORIS is showing snow water temperatures, and the red is indicating 32 degree snow temperature. And that, together with the lower center graphic, the 35 to 45% density of the snow, means the snow is melting in this area quite nicely. The lower right graphic is showing a 48-hour snow melt across the area, and basically anywhere from 3/4 to 2 inches of melt in this orange to yellow to orange area. You'll notice interior Maine, northern Maine, not much in the way of melt, if any. The snow water equivalent highlight map from the River Forecast Center shows the high areas of the Tug Hill Plateau, the high greens into northwest Maine and New Hampshire, and even down East Main, 8 to 12 inches of SWE, snow water equivalent, with 5 to 8 generally around those high elevations. Of course, the valleys of the Mohawk and Champlain in southern New England, where we've lost most of the snow, you have nothing to an inch of snow water equivalent. And we're concerned with the area here in western Massachusetts into southern Vermont and southwest substantial help. Please mute your phones. Thank you. The USGS real-time stream flow conditions, I thought I'd throw this on today because you can see greens, blues, and even black, normal to above normal stream flow. That's the area where we've experienced the melt in the last week or two. And the oranges and reds are really showing the area below normal stream flow where there hasn't been any melt for 3 months. In fact, up on the Racket River at Piercefield, the lowest March stream flow in 100 years, and the Oswegatchie River and Oswegatchie about a 70-year low. So they've had no runoff from any of the snow yet, but they still have quite a bit to melt. And the same with the groundwater network from the USGS. You can see the greens are where we've had some melt, replenishing the groundwater network. And then still with the areas of northern New England and northern New York, there's been nothing into the groundwater groundwater table in the past 3 months. A New York water supply system, we see it's almost 20% below normal, and our concern there is that they don't have really too much snow left to melt there. And hopefully they need some rain, they'll get some rain there. So that was in our area that normally dried in the drought monitor. And also lakes like Indian Lake and Sacandaga Reservoir, they're several feet below normal in that area. But those two reservoirs have a little more snow to melt. Quabbin Reservoir and Scituate are pretty much normal. Scituate's at 100% of Providence water supply. In the Lake Champlain area, we're about 2.5 feet below normal. As you see the little turn there as they start to get their runoff for the season, the snowmelt season. Soil moisture, river ice thickness, and frost depth here. On the shallow term, the short-term shallow soil moisture was dried north, and we've moistened up in southern coastal New England and western New York. The longer-term Palmer drought indices near normal, slightly below normal, south coast and the east coast. River ice thicknesses, as we talked about all winter, the January through March, accumulated freezing degree days are above normal. But in southern New York and southern New England, the season is over for any ice jam potential. Central New York and central New England, near normal threat. And then northern New York through northern New England, we have an above normal threat with extreme northern New England and Maine not expected to have ice move until mid or late April. And extreme northern rivers, like up in the St. John, we have reports of over 2 feet of ice on the river. And it's common to have 1 to 2 foot of ice thickness in many of the rivers in extreme northern New Hampshire, northern and interior Maine. And I mentioned earlier we have a ice jam breakup on the Schenectady reach of the Mohawk River, which it's common to have it in that area where the river meanders, except this year we have more ice than normal. And we have some freeze-up jams that are just still in place on the Aroostook, Penobscot, and Kennebec rivers. The frost is out of much of southern New England, southern New York, but we're still carrying 19 inches of frost at Burlington, bare ground there, 9 inches at Jericho, and 7 inches at Newcomb. Looking at the path ahead for the next 2 weeks, week 1, generally below normal temperatures with above normal precipitation. Week 2, below normal temperatures, slightly above normal to normal precipitation. The 48-hour QPF done this morning. The northwestern flank of our area shows 1/4 to 1/2 inch, and much of that is going to be frozen, mix of frozen precipitation in the next 48 hours. Central New England to central Maine, anywhere from 1/2 to 1 inch. A few pockets a little bit higher than that. And in Maine, much of central and northern Maine, I said earlier, will be mixed or frozen. We look at the 7-day precipitation out of the Weather Prediction Center. You see a good slug of rainfall in the center part of the country where it's been most of the spring, heavy rain, over 4 inches. But that axis heading up into New England. In the next 2 weeks, the axis of precipitation and the temperatures are going to be critical for interior New York and northern New England. As we feel that with the above normal precipitation, we could still get some ice and snow in these events in northern New England. Looking at our teleconnecting patterns, the NAO has been positive most of the winter, and the latest runs continue to have most of the members still positive, and the PNA is expected to go negative. And during this regime of positive NAO, negative PNA, we have basically a southeast ridge over the U.S., and we get a southwesterly flow aloft, and it means a quick flow in the atmosphere, so these events are going to come in and out, but we're going to have a southwest flow bringing in a precip and warmer temperatures. The outlooks for the 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day, on the left you'll have the temperatures colder than normal in much of New England, especially northern New England. We see that gradient between the cold and warmer than normal over the east, which means there will be a frontal system battle zones area where precip is going to be thrown into the cold air. That's the chances of some wintry precipitation. But I want to keep in mind that below normal temperatures, in the north, normal is in the 40s, in the south, low 50s, so even below normal can do some melting. Precip during the 6 to 10 day is above normal in the northeast. And likewise, the 8 to 14, the cold is the hair over, equal chances hair over being below normal for the cold. And the same with precipitation, normal in northern New England, slightly above normal in southern New England and New York. And the CPC outlook for April is slightly below normal temperatures in the northeast, and normal to above normal precip for the month is knocking on our door to the south. The surface map as of tomorrow shows the first system cutting through central New England with snow and ice to the western New York and the northwestern New England and Maine, with rain here on the coast. And you see the upper level, 500 or 18,000 foot steering currents, the southwest over much of New England, bringing in some Pacific modified air. And only in northern New England are they cold enough so that the atmosphere could drop ice or snow. Looking out another 10 days to the 13th, we have a big high pressure off the coast, and there's a broad southwest flow of warm, wet air heading into New England. And if this pans out, it could be quite a bit of precipitation in the next 10 days. And you can see from the 18,000 foot map, we have the southwest flow right out of part of the Gulf. If this verifies, it's a warm, wet pattern. Looking at our river forecast here today in the northeast, we have 27 gauges near flood stage and 3 right around minor flood stage, 10 to 2 above or below in the Housatonic River area. So that's where we're watching today, that area. We look at our Met model ensemble forecast system going out for the next 3 to 7 days. You can see a number of yellow squares, which are 70% of exceeding alert stage, and a couple of 30% orange circles that are 30% chance of exceeding minor flood stage, now creeping up into parts of the Merrimack and even tributaries of Lake Champlain, possible in a 3 to 7 day period. So when we look at our flood potential outlook map here today, in western New York, we have above normal, because if you remember the GS flows, we're pretty much above normal to much above normal right now, just below flood stage there. So we have above normal chance with the antecedent conditions, even though there's not much snow to melt there. Any rainfall would bring them to flood stage on the Buffalo Creeks, part of the Genesee. And as we head further east into parts of New York and much of New England, we have above normal chances there, basically because of some of the conditions leading to excess of snow water equivalent in this warm southwest flow that we have pictured here, bringing more precip into these basins and melt. And then on that map, if I'll go back to that, across the far north of New York and Maine, we figure that these areas here are a little closer to normal snow water equivalent, and they're going to be colder, with possibly building the snowpack in the next 5 to 10 days. Our next outlook, we're going to schedule that on Thursday, the 16th, one day earlier than normal, unless we have something happening within that time period. And I just threw this map on down here below. It's about 18 years ago. We can't forget that it could still snow real heavy in southern New England. And Boston had a 25 to 30-inch snowstorm. And that's about it. There's some pictures that were given to us from our forecasters up in Caribou and Gray, Maine, and out in Albany of the ice jam, the lower center one out in Schenectady. And we'll look at some of the Penobscot River up in Maine. Still looks like the middle of winter in central northern Maine. I'd like to thank everybody for the pictures and supporting, putting the graphics and the information together here in our office in Taunton. Any questions?
Yeah, this is Bill from Connecticut Hydro. I see they backed off some of the rainfall on the last update. I was wondering if they were going to back down the river gauge height on Gaylordsville gauge with that.
Yeah, this is Ron Horwood. I'm the senior HAZ forecaster here. I did the QPF this morning. The QPF has come down since yesterday. The preliminary guidance, which the hydrologic forecasters are going through now, are, I think, keeping Falls Village and Gaylordsville really still kind of close to flood stage, but overall a little less impact than yesterday's forecast. It looks like the way the system is coming through New England, there could be two shields of heavy rain, one right along the front, which is forecast to set up basically maybe a bit north of the Housatonic, and then another near the south coast of New England. So you're not out of the woods for the Housatonic, but it's a slightly lower chance than yesterday.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? If not, we'll be back on in 2 weeks.
Thanks, Ed.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Ed.
you.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks, Ed.